Welcome to From the Pages of AFJ. I'm Jeff Cota, lead content editor of American Farriers Journal. This is the second installment of From the Pages of AFJ, in which we sit down with hoof-care experts who appear in the magazine to dig deeper into the topics and answer the questions that you have. In this episode, we have the privilege of speaking with Derek Poupard. Derek is originally from South Africa and shoes racehorses for Godolphin Racing in Dubai. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Pleasure to be on here.
Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Some might be wondering why we're holding this session in the morning rather than our typical evening time slot. It's simply because of the time difference that Derek is in. Our typical time probably would be about 4 a.m. for Derek, and this time slot is a lot more manageable for him. It's what, about 7 p.m. there in Dubai?
Well, no, I'm actually currently in the UK.
You're in the UK.
Yeah,
okay.
I've been to Dubai since now over, and then now I've headed back. All the horses came back to the UK now because the UK season has just started.
Okay.
So I go back and forth with the horses.
Okay, so it's about 4 p.m. there then.
4 p.m. right now, correct? Yeah.
Great. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. Before we get into the discussion, we encourage the audience to jump into the chat or the Q&A field down below and submit your questions for Derek. Hopefully, many of you can listen to this while you're in the truck or working, for those in the United States. But we also understand that some might not be able to continue listening while getting under a horse. We'll be posting this episode to our website and YouTube channel so you can watch it later. The April article focused on Derek's experiences in 3D printing. But before we delve into that a little bit, you have a history of innovation and invention with such things as the hoof cast, orthopedic casting, and the quick shoe, which many in our audience probably more familiar with its current name, Formahoof. You've spent a great deal of your farrier career pursuing alternative methods. Can you fill us in on your interest and your rationale behind that?
Absolutely. I mean, I do believe that a lot of what we're doing is a bit archaic. We're shoeing horses the same way now for probably 1,000 years. So, with new technology, I thought there must be an alternative to keep horses sounder, because we all know that peripheral loading does create problems. And it's all been highlighted, I would say highlighted because of the fact that I take my horses from the UK and I take them to Dubai and I take their shoes off and I take them barefoot. And I've noticed that, the degradation that I have with shoes on reverses itself very, very quickly. After 3 months, I seem to have a reversal of the foot restoring itself back. And I thought there must be a way of us keeping or shoeing our horses to try and stop this degradation from happening, through peripheral loading, through not having the caudal and palmar support that a horse actually needs. And also I've seen that the horses are sounder and they seem to run better in this situation, because in Dubai what I'm doing is I nail the shoes on the day they race. The shoes come off immediately after they've run. And we've had a huge success rate out there. And probably the best couple of seasons we've had out there have been in this method. So because of that now, that's why the hoof cast developed because of that. And now the 3D pads have developed because of that. So yeah, I'm always trying to make horses probably sounder, stronger for longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that, getting into the training program a little bit more, for those who aren't familiar with the training environment, why is it that they pull the shoes? I mean, I know it's about, you discussed the deformation and whatnot, but the environment plays a role in that also, doesn't it?
Oh, it's not a place. It's all about environment. Unfortunately, we are dictated by it. The horse's foot is a product of the environment and its conformation. That's the be-all and end-all of it. So when we take the horses out of an abrasive environment, I'm taking them to a pure sand. I haven't got a tar road or a tarmac road in sight. So yes, that's the only reason I can do it. Otherwise, I've got absolutely no chance. So because of that now, if I can actually take that formula of the barefoot into a pad and put on a horse's foot, am I going to create the same forces or dynamics in the foot that I've got with a barefoot horse. And that is exactly where this has all evolved from.
Right. They one more question about the casting product. When you applied that, you had the casting product, but in order for the casting product to sort of adhere to the foot, you had to create a sort of this. I guess it was a pad, but it had a bit of a rocker on the picture that I saw. But in order to put it on, you had to create that pad where it had something to catch that casting product onto.
Yeah, I had little barbs. So basically what it was is I was creating a shoe that went on without nails. And basically the shoe was just a nylon carbon fiber, basically a shoe-shaped pad with little barbs on the side. And those barbs caught onto the casting tape. So, I'm trying to progress on that side of things where the horses can stay without nails and can still stay in work, basically, and in an abrasive environment without nailing. Because when you do take this off, you have got a perfect foot underneath there, which is, to me, is key. But in the actual casting itself is that, when a horse's foot starts getting compromised and you start nailing a horse's foot more than 2 or 3 times a month, you end up, your foot looks like a tea bag. And that's why we've been gluing shoes on horses. But the thing is, if you glue a shoe on a horse repetitively, and every time you take the glue on shoe off, you end up taking more of the foot down and you end up with a stub to work with. Whereas with a hoof cast, now we're creating basically a thick wall to nail to. So you can nail to it repetitively and have something to work with. So that's, so now the combination of having the hoof cast to make the foot healthier and stronger, combined with the 3D pad that goes underneath the shoe or as a shoe itself, I'm creating the dynamic forces of a healthy foot. And I've seen the result of that.
Right. It wasn't necessarily a smooth process though when you were creating the 3D pad at first. It had a trial and error process, didn't it?
Oh, it's incredible! Hey, that's a huge understatement because the failure rate is so high when you start. Remember, I'm using this is new technology. I'm pushing boundaries on products that probably weren't designed for the specific force. So you can imagine how the first plastics I used were the PLAs, which is basically a recycled plastic, and it's lovely to work with, beautiful to print. But you put it on a horse's foot, and I think the first one shattered in a couple of hours. I think the horse ordered its. That was a huge shock, and that was a huge learning process as well. So, then I went to just pure nylon, which is too soft and too flexible. And then finally I've come across the nylon carbon fiber, which because they make a nylon carbon fiber, nylon Kevlar, and a nylon fiberglass. And I've tried all of those products, and I found all the nylon products are fantastic, but you put an abrasive, stronger material with it, you've got something that'll work.
Now, switching from a typical filament to the materials, the nylon carbon fiber material hybrid that you're using now, that means you need to do some sort of work to help the 3D printer work properly.
Absolutely. So, the typical 3D printer would print at probably 220 degrees. And that's the simple filaments, your plastics, and your probably 90% of the filaments out there would print at below 230 degrees. And they are not abrasive. So the minute you start working in nylons, the temperature goes up. Now, the minute the temperature goes up, you have to have what's called the hot end of the printer, which does all the work. It's basically melting a 1.75 millimeter string, basically, into a 0.04 millimeter string, and then just laying it 0.2 millimeters at a time. So you can imagine now it takes 4 or 5 hours sometimes to print a pad. but it's basically just melting it on top of each other. So the minute you go to a stronger filament, you need to upgrade the nozzle so it doesn't wear out. And you can either use a ruby nozzle, or they call a nozzle X now, which is a hardened nozzle that won't wear out. If you were to put a normal copper nozzle on there, it would, probably about 2 or 3 prints. The hole inside there would be 4 times the size, and it would just be useless. And also the temperature. If you try and push a hot end past its normal temperature, you're gonna find you melt the aluminium block that holds everything together. It's going to have cooling fans to cool the filament as it's coming through. There's quite a few little technical things that you need to learn about that, but it's once you get into it, it's actually quite exciting, because you'll learn how to change the parts as well. You have to, because that's part of 3D printing.
Yeah, absolutely. And and you have to become a bit of a mechanic in the process.
Mechanic / electrician / I think psychologist as well, because you start talking to someone. But to me, it's actually brilliant though, because once you actually know the fundamentals of it, and know the fundamentals of taking the machine apart, because in all essence, it's very, very simple. There's probably 5 or 6 different basic parts that go wrong. And once you understand what the problems are, and you can take it apart, it's very rewarding when you can take something apart, replace the parts, which, believe it or not, are all available on Amazon or eBay. Right. Because they're pretty generic when it comes to the actual hot end parts and the nozzles, and everything's available on Amazon. So you get all your spares, because there's a heating probe that heats the block up. There's a thermostat that measures the temperature. Then there's your nozzle, and it's all put together in a little cooling fan. But the whole thing, you can break it down into probably 5 or 6 parts that are available on Amazon, which I think is brilliant, because it gives you the access to repair them.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. So let's take the audience through the process of creating a pad. First off, you need the dimensions of that particular hoof to even get started.
That's correct.
Right.
So what I'll do now is that, if someone comes to me and says, right, I want a pad for my hoof, right, what's the widest point of the foot and the length of the foot from toe to heel? And then, basically, with how all software or how all 3D printers work is they've got a software that runs that 3D printer. And that's like this matter control that runs the pulses, the pulses, sorry. And there's a prusa slicer that runs the prusas, and there's a Cura, which is also another free domain one that will run the Creality series. And all 3 of them have got the option on there to scale whatever size pad you've got on there. So you can actually take any size pad and then scale it to the size that you want it to. It will, of course, scale everything proportionately. Unless you unlock it, then you can actually scale things to width and length and height. And once you can do that, it gives you the option of then scaling it to exactly the size foot that you're working with, down to the fraction of a millimeter. Mm-hmm. So that's the key to the whole thing. So if you are do 3D printing yourself, you can actually measure the horse's foot and have it exactly how you want it. And a lot of my people that buy the pads from me will send me a photograph of the bottom sole of the foot with a tape measure on it, and I'll have it exactly to that size. So when it'll just drop straight onto the horse's foot.
Right. Now the pads, what are the different options in terms of applying them to the foot, whether it's with a shoe or without a shoe? How does that whole thing work?
Well, I've got both. The most common at the moment would be the nail-on version, because nailing is still 95% of all horses are nailed on right now. So, and then we've got 3 versions of that. We've got I call it the eddy clips, because Edo Shaughnessy and I developed this one particular pad together, which is no impression material. It's purely just basically a frog support to go underneath a horse that's going at speed, because it weighs nothing, especially without impression material. And all it's doing is it's taking the prolapsing of frogs and racehorses away, because the horse is now bearing weight across its entire foot the same way as it would with a barefoot. And then I've got what's called the half mesh version, which means half from the point of the frog backwards. It has holes or recesses to hold an impression material in place. So, and I'd use this on probably my show jumpers, and the horse is riding in an environment that's pretty controlled. It's not too rocky. And then I'd go to a full mesh version, which is your full pad. And that's also got the recesses and to hold the impression material in place, because I do feel that if you are going to put a full pad on a horse or half a pad, you must put impression material in there, because you want to have pressure distributed evenly amongst that caudal aspect of the foot. So I find that very, very important. And especially if you mix it with the copper sulfate, you'll find that it'll be very, you don't get the smell, you don't get the rotten foot underneath the pad like you could do.
Yeah. Is there, we have a question from the audience asking about, is it possible to have a horse stand on pressure plates to help feed dimensions into the software?
To be fair, I've actually been into the pressure plate situation, and I've tried to, I know exactly what they're trying to say. If the horse has got a more pressure on the medial side or lateral side, and I did found that when I was working on pressure plates, the horse would just move its weight distribution just by a fraction, and your reading would just change so much when it comes to that sort of stuff. And especially with my race horses now, if I take their shoes off and leave them barefoot for half an hour and I go back to them, I've got a totally different reading. So it's very, very difficult if you're going to use that as your total guideline as far as where it goes. I'm very much a basic kind of guy. It's basically you've got the bone, you've got the tissue around the bone and your hoof all around it. And all I'm trying to do is trying to keep it as close to what the natural bony column of the horse is. And don't try and overcomplicate it, because I think overcomplicating is going to lead to other problems. And that's my personal aspect on that.
You have one pad in particular that replicates the barefoot, like you were alluding to a few moments ago. Can you kind of walk through how this pad works, how it's designed, and the results that you've seen from the horses that you shoe?
Absolutely. So basically, Ed O'Shaughnessy, who's one of the top farriers here in town, who works for the top trainer in town as well, approached me and he said, "Right, can we develop a pad that we can use with racehorses that get sore heels?" 90% of all racehorses at some time in their life will get a sore medial heel, or they'll get a corn, or they'll get a crushing of their heels because of the conformation, the overshoeing, the environment that they're working. So, over a very, very short amount of time, I think within 2 weeks of us starting the design process to having it on a horse and then seeing the results of it has been absolutely amazing. And basically all we've done is, if you took a barefoot horse and wet its foot and stood it on the ground, and you saw the imprint of that barefoot on the ground, I have created that imprint into a pad. So, and that's the be all and end of all. I've created the frog that's there is now putting pressure on the foot with a shoe on. And the minute you put that on the horse, you cannot believe how quickly that heel restores itself, how the dissipation of the force away from the wall, the heels themselves, it changes immediately. And I think the best thing to do, anybody takes an open-ended shoe and stands on it, if you just put a shoe on, and you'll feel the heels of the shoe digging into your foot, and you're going, I'm now 1,000-pound horse, and this is what I'm standing on. They are very forgiving animals to put up with what we're doing to them. Let me tell you right now, because when they do go sore, they are almost beyond repair when they get to that situation. And I've seen, in the combination of putting a hoof cast on combined with this pad, I've taken horses that have been almost fracture lame back into work within a couple of days. Mm-hmm. So that has been eye-opening for me as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. And as for those who might be interested in getting into 3D printing, what kind of investment are we looking at? What are some of the considerations that they should keep in mind?
Well, the couple of things you have to work out is that the material that you're printing with, most of it's available on Amazon nowadays, probably about $50 per roll of material. The printers, if you can get a printer that can print at 250 to 260 degrees Celsius and can print an abrasive material. And there's a lot of them out there now. I mean, the Pulse, which is I buy from California, and I've got four of those. And then they've got the Prusa, which is in Europe, which is a very common one. And they've actually come out with a little, it's called a Prusa Mini. And I've got 7 of those at my print farm in Florida because they are 180 centimeters by 180 centimeters would be your bed that you're printing on. And that's probably the size 10 horseshoe. So that covers 90% of all the horseshoes, or all the pads that I make. And they're probably under $500, probably about $500 now. There's a huge weight in this, and you've got to put them together. But that's something that I would look at if you were going to do that. If you want a machine that's going to work straight off the bat for $1,000, that would be the Pulse from Meta Hackers in California, and they'll ship it to you where it'll work. Especially if in America, it's free shipping, and that'll work straight off the bat, and they do work very well. I've got 2 of them going right now, printing pads for tomorrow. So
right.
That would be the best. That would be the best bet. But there are some guys who are using like the cheaper, very very cheap models that they've upgraded. If they're pretty good at upgrading the parts, they can do that. But it's pretty much so. One thing I would say, you do have to have a dehydrator for the filament that you're working with, because nylon it just absorbs moisture so quickly, and the minute that it absorbs moisture, it becomes unprintable. So it's called a filament dehydrator that you get. You can use a food dehydrator to dry it out, but I just use a filament dehydrator, and it just keeps the filament dry all the time. If you don't do that, there's a couple of small things, like you must keep it dehydrated. If you've got an enclosure to put the printer in, that does make a huge difference as well for the print quality. Mm-hmm. You can control the environment that it's printing in.
Right. And so it pretty much from design to printing, it takes about 4 hours. Is that correct?
No. Well, I design everything on a program called Shaper 3D on an iPad Pro. So they've got the pencil, and you can actually design it and manipulate it exactly how you want. So whatever your imagination is, you can do it to that. But that's, when I say that's hours and hours of study, that is really was the most technical part of the whole process, was learning how to use Shaper 3D. But once I got to use that now, it's I can do it second nature now. So, like for example, Mark Van Der Rest last week had a horse that's got a little bit of a bone that's dropped inside a foot, excess bone growing. So I designed a 3-degree pad with a recess directly underneath where the bone was protruding. So we can take things and make them bespoke, which I think is fantastic in this game. So now he's got the pad that's going to go on the horse, designed exactly to fit that foot. But there's going to be a recess on that entire side where the horse's foot has now been compromised. So I think that I find is the most exciting part about the whole process here. And especially now, if whoever's got a 3D printer, they can approach me and say, right, I need this for my horse. I can design it, email it to them. They can print it overnight and then put it on the horse tomorrow. So that, I think, is what the future's going to be like. Is guys are going to come back and say, I've had a horse in America that had navicular. I did a 4-degree pad for it with a total recess over the frog, so there was no pressure on there except for the soft impression material, and that worked very, very well. And there's not, and it was made to fit the horse's foot exactly. So those kind of bespoke things are going to be, I think, are going to be a forte in 3D printing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the technology is quickly changing. I mean, just in the last year, it's changed quite a bit, hasn't it?
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's incredible. It really is. I mean, actually, funny enough, this guy sent me a video of my first 3D printer, which was only 14 months ago. And I'm looking and I'm going, hang on, since then I think I've had 16 since then. So it does. It's just gone so quickly, and the advancement of, because I'm pushing boundaries all the time now. That's the most exciting part about that is farriers have come back to me and says, right, can we try this and can we do this, and we are pushing boundaries that I don't think we could do in the past.
Right, and if you were to rely on someone else to provide you with those things, I mean, the turnaround time would be a lot longer. Whereas where you have your own 3D printers, your prototype turnaround is quite a bit quicker.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, it's like now I'm designed a pad today. I'll print it tonight. It'll be on tomorrow morning. You think about in the past how long it would take just for someone to design it. Or someone, so and I've got thousands of designs now. So someone says, well, I'd like this for my horse. I've probably got 90% of it made up already, or to a degree where it's just a little bit of tweaking here and there. I can get it to exactly how I want it. So there's no doubt about that. The turnaround from A to B or A to on the foot, it's mind blowing. It's the best way to describe that.
Yeah. In terms of since the technology is evolving so quickly, what do you see the future in Farrier with us?
Well, I want to push boundaries with speed. I want to push boundaries with printer diameters, that we can actually print what we want to at a fraction of the time. Is it ever going to get to the stage where farriers have got 3D printers in the back of their vans? No. I think it's going to be a stage where farriers are going to have 2 3D printers so they can print in pairs, because it's going to be cost effective enough to do that. And what you're going to do is that you'll then be able to come home at night and say, right, tomorrow I've got this horse to do, and I'm going to print out my pair of pads or my 2 pairs of pads out for this horse tomorrow. And they're going to be bespoke pads, and they're going to charge more money for those horses because they are now doing something that's out of the ordinary. So the farriers out there that are doing the higher end horses, or want to step up or be, slightly more higher than the average farrier, is going to have this opportunity to do this. And I think that's a huge thing now because, for example, especially with the lameness issues now, you can actually create spiral shoes. You can create a 5-degree or 10-degree angle if you wanted to on a horse. It's going to take a long time to print, but if it's printing overnight for you and you wake up in the morning and you take it off with you, that's perfect. And I think that's going to be the forte of it, because the 3D pads that I'm printing right now, all the popular designs that I'm printing that are selling very quickly, they are going to be injection molded to exactly the same specifications that I'm working with now. So what's going to happen is that all those pads will be available, but it'll be the degrees and all the stuff that's beyond the normal will be 3D printed still. And I think it's going to create a higher demand for the pads when people start realizing how much sounder their horses are going to be.
And this, as far as, and this really could be a game changer also for equine hospitals and universities and that sort of thing also. Absolutely.
I mean, we can do a lateral extension by 4 millimeters if you wanted to, or I've got a hospital plate that actually screws on. It's like a lid, like a cup that fits on a horse's foot that you cast on. To be fair, the best way to describe it, if you can think it, we can 3D print it. And that is basically how it works now. If someone says, okay, I said, if you can draw it or you can describe it, I can design it and we can 3D print it. So, and that's never been done before, because the engineering work you'd have to to actually create something that complex. It's just beyond words now. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm talking 2 years' time, I'll say every equine institution that specializes in podiatry will have a pair, at least 2 or 4 3D printers working on the side, creating stuff for them. Yeah, and and I'll have a plethora of files available that you can then access to and say, right, I want a 5-degree spiral this, and it'll be there on tap that you can actually just go and pop it onto the printer and have it printing for you for the next day. That's the way I
Well,
see it.
yeah. And what do you think the possibility is, or what the future holds for the potential of printing actual shoes?
I don't think it's ever going to. No, I don't think it's going to happen. I've done it. I've 3D printed shoes, even in a non-abrasive environment. We can't get to the stage where we can print a shoe that can stand up to abrasion, purely because we're going to start going into printing steels. And that is very, very expensive, very, very time consuming, especially with the amount of shoes that are out there. I mean, I'm experimenting right now with the cast on shoe, but it's got a little, Doug Ehrman's got the DE tap, which is a little tap, and I'm actually placing those as wear plates into it. So yeah,
okay,
it'll be something, it'll be a hybrid of some sort. And that's something I'm really going to be concentrating on, is creating a shoe that's probably 90% composite, but the wear part is going to have to be either titanium or some sort of material that won't wear out, because unfortunately abrasion is still the biggest, and that's the reason we shoe horses today. Right. That's the reason that shoes was invented, was because the Romans built a road and the feet just wore out. So that's the day that they started saying, hang on, we've got to start putting something on these horses to stop the wear from happening. So that'll be something I'll be fighting all my life, I think, is the wear on a composite horseshoe, because it is huge.
Yeah. We have another question. Have you heard of products being produced that molecularly replicate spiderweb thread?
I have not. That's a new one. No, I'll have to look that up. Yeah, no, thanks for that. Spiderweb thread. Yeah, that'll be a good one. I think the glues that we use in the future are going to be changing, because I mean I've been working with a bit of there's a super glue now that you put on that you can actually spray it to activate it instantaneously. So it'd be lovely if they come up with some sort of adhesion that we can actually put something on instantaneously that actually holds well on a horse's foot, because there's lots of glues out there, but I still don't think we've hit the perfect one yet. And I think that needs to be at a molecular level that we need to change. But I think that will change in time, I think, with more and more people going into that field now.
That's fascinating. Well, thank you very much, Derek, for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time to doing this and sharing your experience and expertise on this. And as a reminder, if you miss any part of the discussion, the recording will be posted on the AFJ website, AmericanFarriers.com, our YouTube channel, and our social media channels as well. Thank you very much for watching.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.